And joining me now to discuss America's tortured past and present is David Swanson, campaigner for Roots Action. Hi, David. Nice to see you. So first, want to talk about the case of this man, John Kiriakou. He's a former CIA official. There he is on the screen, accused of leaking classified information to the media. Now, this is also the same man that blew the whistle on the use of waterboarding during the Bush administration. So today, there are many questions as to whether or not this case is about politics or justice. David, what do you think?
Certainly the former. This is someone being charged, the sixth person being charged under the Obama administration under the Espionage Act. But he is not being accused of having sought to endanger the nation, having sought to aid any so-called enemy. He's being accused of blowing the whistle on the crime of torture. And so he is being prosecuted for something which, yes, does resemble the original purpose of the Espionage Act of 1917, which was to prosecute anyone opposing a war or discouraging recruitment. Anytime you tell the truth about U.S. foreign policy, you are discouraging recruitment from the U.S. military. But that's not how they talk about it. They talk about it as if he has endangered national security, and yet this is someone who's gone and worked since these events for a Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and there's no suggestion that there's been any danger there, that he's a traitor to the nation. It's all about finding a technicality on which to prosecute someone who has spoken out against a crime.
Now, David, I want to play a part of an interview that he did with journalist David Leopold of Truth Out. Here he is talking about the case of a detainee by the name of Abu Zubaydah and what he discovered CIA officials did to this suspect. This is what they say they needed to do to extract what they call actionable intelligence. Take a look.
My view now is, now that we know it was 83 times, if you have to waterboard somebody 83 times to collect the information, even if the information's correct and it's actionable, it was the wrong thing to do.
So this man, he was waterboarded, as we just saw, 83 times. And we wouldn't have learned about this had it not been for whistleblowers like John Kiriakou. So in this case, does the ends justify the means?
Well, of course not. We are talking about torture, and the New York Times calls it a suffocation tactic, as if that excuses it. Waterboarding is torture. The United States has prosecuted it domestically and at the end of past wars. And this is something that we were first told about by Mr. Kiriakou, and then we later learned, and he learned from leaked documents, that it was 83 times. But there is no evidence that any useful information was gained from torturing Abu Zubaydah, who still remains locked up in a U.S. prison with no rights. There is no evidence that there's a trade-off here, that the torture gains us information that could not be gained without the torture, and so we have to make a calculation. No, this is all negative. It puts the United States outside of the rule of law, destroys our reputation around the world, and it encourages torture by other countries, which are following the U.S. example to an enormous extent.
Now, others, David, would say that when you work for the NSA or you work for the CIA, you're dealing with very classified information. And when you become employed by these agencies, you take an oath not to disclose government secrets. And the Justice Department says that he broke this promise. What do you say to that?
I say there's a higher oath to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. There is an obligation to report on crimes. When you are aware of felonies, you are legally required to make that information known. There is an understanding in military law that you must refuse illegal orders. And they are not going after people who leak information in a consistent manner. They are going after people who blow the whistle on crimes. This is number 6. And there is a resemblance here to Bradley Manning, a resemblance to Thomas Drake. They are going after whistleblowers, which is exactly what candidate Barack Obama promised not to do.
Now, the man that blew the whistle and he's the man that exposed these torturing practices that happened under the Bush administration. These practices, he calls them illegal. The man by the name of Philip Zelikow of the State Department made this argument, and I want to pull the quote from Wired magazine that was published in the story. It says, quote, Zelikow argued that the Geneva Conventions applied to al-Qaeda, a position neither the Justice Department nor the White House shared at the time. And so this is kind of something that is central to this whole argument. Is there a distinction between treatment of prisoners and terror suspects?
Well, there shouldn't be. Philip Zelikow is down here at the University of Virginia, and I feel a little bit better about living here since this memo has come out. It's good that at least without becoming a whistleblower, at least he said the right thing internally. I guess that's something. But this was the maneuver by the Bush administration. There was an attempt to get outside of U.S. law and to get outside of the laws of war. And his contention was that both types of law applied. There was no middle ground. There was no third category of people whom you could lock up in black sites or Guantanamo outside of either the Geneva Conventions or our anti-torture statute and war crimes statute. He went so far as to go back to the Constitution and say that the Eighth Amendment on cruel and unusual punishment was central here and needed to be applied. That is very much to his credit. He ought to have gone one step further, like Mr. Kiriakou, and blown the whistle publicly.
And David, there is still a lot of Americans that support the use of torture. Here is a soundbite from Dick Cheney on this very subject. Take a listen.
In your view, we should still be using enhanced interrogation?
Yes.
Should we still be waterboarding terror suspects?
I would strongly support using it again if circumstances arose where we had a high-value detainee and that was the only way we could get him to talk.
People call it torture. You think it should still be a tool?
Yes.
Now, to ask a question that he would ask, and a lot of people, like-minded people, would ask, if torturing a prisoner could prevent the next 9/11, would you be in support of it? If it would lead to information that could prevent something like that from happening, would you then support it?
Right, but it's a bizarre question because there's no scenario where that is possible. There's no instance where you can reasonably predict that there is any chance that torture will prevent such a thing. There is no way of knowing that someone will give you accurate information under torture. And Dick Cheney is not a news analyst here. Dick Cheney is one of the top torturers. It's like asking a rapist if you think rape should be legal or not. Dick Cheney and the rest of the top torturers are not being prosecuted. They're on book tour instead of on trial. And to ask them what they think of the matter is to disgrace the journalism profession. To take seriously their contention that there is this fictional scenario in which torture is going to save us after these years and years of evidence to the contrary is outrageous.
All right, David. Pleasure to have you on the show as always. That was David Swanson, campaigner for Roots Action.